we're 21, what do we have to lose?
Because everybody's personalities are so woke.
We tried too many things too soon. You can't afford to make a mistake.
Is it tough to remove that personal time?
But I'm a very competitive person internally. Essentially, someone's trusting you with their kid's future.
You've heard of Mama Earth.
I think women know how to juggle things in life.
We've been working with you for almost 6 months now. So you
Yeah.
started at 21.
Yeah.
Like, I was partying at 21. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the FoundHers Podcast series. Today with me, I have Alisha Mashruwala, the co-founder of OnCourse Vantage. Hi Alisha, thank you so much for being here.
Hi Hinal, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
How are you feeling today?
Pretty good. Looking forward to our chat and conversation.
Great. So why don't we first start with a 1-minute pitch about what is OnCourse all about?
Sure. So essentially, OnCourse is an education consulting company, and our main focus and emphasis is on kind of providing a full-fledged solution for anyone who wants to go abroad to study. So this means we essentially help with boarding school applications, undergraduate applications, postgrad applications, MBA applications, but along with that also things like test preparation, for GMAT, GRE, SAT, ACT, everything that you can think of as well. So look at it as your one-stop solution for anything study abroad.
Yeah, I think it's like a complete package for somebody who's going abroad. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, because I know your business is almost 13 years old now. So I'd love to know, how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so I think it's been 14 years since OnCourse has
wow.
existed. So it started when we were 21, so pretty young actually. Essentially, it's a very I would say random story. It's not something I ever thought of doing out of college. So, I had actually I did my undergraduate education in the US, where I studied psychology at Harvard. And then essentially after graduating, my co-founder, Akhil, and I sort of, we were just generally guiding students through their entire study abroad journey, more from a casual perspective, just as friends. And I think that's when we realized that there is a gap in the industry, in India as well. There aren't so many people sort of doing this sort of full-fledged counseling. And it just sort of started with, let's give it a shot. Let's see, we're 21. What do we have to lose? And we kind of both moved back. He was at Northwestern. I was at Harvard. We both moved back and started OnCourse. I think our first year itself, we had about 20 clients, which we realized was quite a bit for people to trust a 21-year-old, through their kids' college admissions journey, which now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, I don't know why people did that. But at the same time, I think I realized at that stage that there was that gap in the industry. And, that 20 clients in the first year sort of spiraled into, I think, 55 the second year. And then, it's just been going on since.
Wow. So you started at 21.
Yeah.
I was partying at 21. You mentioned something about trust, and even I've started out very, very young. I try to, every time I go for a pitch, I tell people, I'm a consultant, and they're like, oh, what's your trajectory? How did you come with this experience, etc. So how did you get that initial trust? Because 20 clients in the first year is huge. So how did that happen?
We never called ourselves consultants at that stage. We were always mentors, as what, the term we still use today when we're working with students. We always have a mentor who's working with a student. And I think that mentor term helped a lot. When we started, I think it was more, as a friend, right? A lot of parents were like, you guys have just been through this whole process. You've gone to good universities. You understand the entire process of university. So, just mentor my child or mentor the student. And that's sort of how it started off. I think what we realized is that there was a lot of hand-holding that was required and a lot of myth-busting that was needed as well.
Yeah.
So at that stage, I think in India, the market was very small. So there were people who knew maybe the top 10 colleges and then nothing beyond that. And most people would just emphasize and focus on just that. But I think having been there, we realized that there was a lot more out there. We had seen a lot of different universities. Both Akhil and I had sports backgrounds as well. So it also started off with a lot of sports players, especially squash players, who kind of were coming to us for advice and insight into how the entire process works. And I think we both just really cared about the student's journey. And I think that came through the entire process as we were going through it. So I think that mentor term helped a lot.
I definitely want to discuss more about the consultancy space because, it's a perception in India. I know you say mentor for a specific reason because mentor still has that notion that the person is a level higher, but they're more personal and involved. As the word is a consultant, which today you guys call yourself as a consultancy, people still feel like a consultant is somebody who is much higher, it is much more expensive, it is much more like investment by themselves as well, and I struggle to set the narrative right. So what is your definition of a consultant, and what do you think Indians perceive consultants as?
Exactly what you said, right? Consultant is always viewed as someone more formal, older, probably, you know, who's more by the book, there to just provide you top-edged advice, which is why we've always used the term mentor. And even when we're working with students now, there's a mentor and a manager that works with them. So, you know, I don't think, while our company is an education consulting company, I think the people working behind it are mentors. And for us, you know, our narrative has always been, this is a relationship business, not an application business, right? Because everything depends on the relationship and rapport that you have with the parent or the student or, you know, whoever you're working with on that team. So I think, yeah, I agree with you in terms of definition of consultant, pretty much exactly what you said, but changing the narrative a bit is absolutely key. We don't work like a consultant at all.
That's not the approach at all.
It's a more casual approach, you know. I would much rather have that friendly rapport with my students, because if I don't, they're going to look at me as like a teacher or a principal and be afraid of me and not tell me the things that they want to, right? So I think that friendly approach is most essential.
Obviously, today I understand why that little respect and a friendly approach would come. When you were 21, 22, and your team, I'm guessing, was the same age or just 1 year younger, how did you conduct yourself as a founder so they understood the fact that there is still a higher authority even though we're small? Because that's a very, very crucial thing for early stage founders, is to know how to even be that sort of higher authority in that company to make the decisions and ensure people who are your age or an age younger treat you the right ways.
I've always maintained that friendly structure, to be honest, right? So I think even when we started off, the few employees that we had were around our age, and we were always friends with them. I think the one thing that we always ensured was that we gave them, again, coming to that point of ownership on a particular thing, and then like just a reporting structure to say, okay, this is sort of what has happened, or, you know, this is how it trickles down. And I think just having that friendly, open environment automatically allowed them to respect us a lot more.
It didn't work adversely?
It didn't. It actually didn't, right? Sometimes, of course, there'll be people who take, you know, advantage of it. But, and that's fine, right? I can't change my personality. I'm not going to change my approach in that sense, you know, for one or two people. We do have like now HR structures in place for the most part, but at the same time, I think that friendly piece has worked 9 out of 10 times. Because I think it's just, they trust you because they know that you're looking out for them, whatever it may be. And then automatically when someone is trusting you, they have that respect for you as well.
So getting you to reflect a little bit, I think you say when we studied entrepreneurship, there are different types of leaders that are there. As we know, Hitler is one of the big, I can think of like a bang opposite to how you're defining. So for a founder who's getting into the service space and who's trying to build something of their own, what are these skill sets? So these key soft skills, actually, it's not skill sets, but I would say, what are the soft skills that founders in a service business should have to ensure that all their stakeholders are appreciating them, respecting them, and having that sort of 9 out of 10 success rate?
3 things I would say. So 1, empathy. 2nd, patience. And 3rd is clarity of thought. So I think if you are, as a founder, clear in terms of what you want or what you want to do, the respect will come through. And I think at the same time, you always have to also put yourself in someone else's shoes to say, okay, that's what that person is going through at that stage. What would I have sort of done, you know, in that sort of space? So I think these are the 3 main things that I would look at.
Your journey has been of 13 years, and I'm sure it wasn't like a one-hit wonder where it just one night you got like 100 applications and, you know, your year was made. Can you talk a little bit about the struggles in your initial years, and is there a specific reason why it took your brand like say 13 years, or was that always something you wanted, a slow and steady sort of an approach to building a brand?
I think we've always wanted the slow, steady approach. We've made, like every business, some mistakes in the past, you know, in terms of trying to grow too fast. I think that hurt us, not necessarily from a brand perspective, like, but personally, I think we were There were times where we tried too many things too soon. And I think very soon, I think the whole thing of running a business is to understand and realize when you're making that mistake, right?
Yeah.
And I think the good thing that we did was we took a step back and said, look, maybe this is not the direction we need to go in. At one point, we had a lot of different programs that we were offering to people, and it just sort of became like hands in every single thing.
Yeah.
And at that stage, we were like, look, I think we need to focus and really put our mind and effort into something that we are really good at, rather than trying to spread ourselves too thin so early in the game. So our goal has always been steady growth. It's been the case since day one, I would say. I think that's a great thing with all of the co-founders and I, that we essentially are all on the same page on that, where we're happy with that steady growth. We want to kind of push our name out as much as possible. 90%, I would say, of our client base has come through word of mouth.
Oh, wow.
So that it's good and bad, both.
Over the last
over the last 13 years.
Wow.
So I'd say 90% has been word of mouth. That
Why
10%,
do you think it's bad?
Bad because we then don't push ourselves out there as much, or put ourselves out there as much, So I think in the last 3 years, we of course understand that, social media is important. Putting ourselves out there on LinkedIn is important. It's important to share student stories as well, right? That's sort of what's a way to generate some business in a way. But I still think because it's a very servicing heavy industry, a very client relationship heavy industry, that it does end up being word of mouth.
Personally, I've had this experience, and I say this being like a 2-year founder, where slow and steady wins the race, and just follow that. And it's so difficult in a city like Bombay, especially to inculcate that, because everybody around you is on like, get this done, get this done, now.
Yeah.
So when I went into the service industry with StartInc, the first 8 months was just me and my team running, till I realized that that's not how I want to run business. And that's when I realized that the power of organic growth beats any paid form that you can ever do. So 90% word of mouth is like a very, very big
Absolutely.
deal.
And I think at some point you have to realize whether you're playing the long game or you're playing the short game, right? Because if you're playing the long game, then you need to be patient. I think that's a really key trait, to have. You need to be patient in terms of knowing that, look, for it to really work out, it's going to take a little bit of time, and you have to be okay with that piece of it. I know in the last 5 years, I would say the number of consulting firms or education consulting firms that have come up is crazy, right? And I think everyone sees that there is a market for it. But there are some people who kind of like that steady growth. There are some people who want to grow extremely fast. There are some people who want to get a lot more outside investment and then possibly, look at it more from an exit standpoint. There's no right or wrong. I think as long as you go into this process knowing that this is what you want from it and this is how you see it, right? And for Nitin, Akan and me, all three of us, we've always believed in that, playing that long game.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a personal question, because I want to play the long game.
Yeah.
But how do I tell my mind that on a day-to-day basis? Because when I completed 2 years, I literally had this feeling where I went to my dad and I was like, it's been 2 years since I've drawn a decent salary. You want me to get married in 2 years? How am I going to figure this out? And while I know patience is the key, it's so difficult to inculcate. So how did you do it? What was your approach towards this?
Sometimes just take a step back and say, look, if this is something I want to do long term, and if the answer is yes to that, then I think you need to actually focus on quality more than the quantity in the start, right? So it's fine to take on those fewer clients. It's fine to sort of say, look, I want to do the best for those 5 clients that I have or 10 clients that I have in the beginning, because that 10 clients can bring you another 100 clients, but one bad client can cut your business by half in a very, very short period of time. So I think that's always something I've been very fearful of. Sometimes I may not come across as like this, but I'm a very competitive person internally.
You were a sports person, so I think it's in your nature.
It's in my nature to be competitive. So I think that competitiveness doesn't allow me to, want to lose any business. And I think the other thing is that I think that ownership on each case that you work with or each client that you work with, a lot is at stake. And at least in our business, you're essentially someone's trusting you with their kid's future. So you can't afford to make a mistake, right? So as long as the intentions are right, that patience comes through, I think. So be patient because you guys are already doing a really good job, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, that is I think my low days are when I'm like impatient, and then the other days I'm like, no, it's in the long run. I will enjoy the benefits of all the compromises in the near
No, I
future.
think the other thing is also having a good person along with you, right?
Yeah.
So I think just sometimes that you might have a bad day and you have someone else, sort of in that same position or same boat who knows how to pick you up, who understands what works for you, and vice versa. So I think having another person who's in that similar situation really helps, right? Because that person's like there to be like, look, it's fine. It's a day, it's 2 days, and then the same thing might happen to them 5 days later, and you're there for them as well.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because twice you mentioned you and your co-founders, with so many different businesses coming into play. And at least in my experience, I've never seen partnerships always be very fruitful for a business. Like, you've seen all the sides, right? Each to their own. But how is it having like two co-founders, especially having two male co-founders, right? Because many females are always hesitant of getting somebody else because they feel like they get overpowered. So how has that journey been for you? And, have you faced, I'm sure you must have had hurdles. If you can tell us a little bit about how you navigated through those conversations when you all three had a different opinion, but you still had to make the decision.
Yeah, for sure. So I think with the co-founders in general, all three of us, so Akhil, Nitin, and myself, have very different skill sets. So in a way that works really well because, together, it makes a really good team. And all three of us handle very different aspects of the business, So, I may be more in like product development and HR and those pieces of it, client relationships. Nitin kind of handles a lot on like the NCR front, and Akhil handles a lot on like business development, marketing, finance stuff. So while we have a lot of conversations, sometimes there may be disagreements, but I think we always trust the person who is sort of in control of that piece to take the decision.
Nice.
And I think that's something that's always been there. I think the communication is really key. So, if it is something to do with HR or client relationships, even though there may be a differing opinion, I end up taking the final call on that. Or if it's something marketing or BD oriented or something, Akhil will take the final call. If it's something Delhi oriented, Nitin will take that final call. And we're okay with that, right? And I think we all trust each other enough to know that even if we make a mistake, the other person will be there to kind of help us and pick us up rather than put us down overall. So I think we've been very lucky with that. I think it comes with communication. I think the whole male-female, founder piece hasn't been too much of a struggle for me. I would say I struggled more with like clients at times rather than like my teammates.
So clients in the sense with male clients, like
yeah,
male
I mean,
parents,
sometimes there have been people who, in the past been like, oh, something payment related, they'll automatically just be like, oh, ask Akhil or ask Nitin, and these are small things, of course, that I've learned to not let affect me. But it happens, right? It's just kind of stereotypes that creep in. There are sometimes, female clients who will only trust what a male says as well. So it's not just a male, female thing. So, it's common where there are a lot of like women who will be like more trusting of a man than of a woman as well. But these are things that have come up. They happen on and off. I think we've all learned how to deal with it now. And I think it's less also now.
It's growing because women are taking more charge. But I mean, it's a little shocking to hear that, you still had those stereotypes kind of creep in when you have a wide range of co-founders. One thing that I really liked, which you answered so clearly, that you all have divided your departments so well, so it becomes very easy in the decision making process for you. So now I think moving a little bit into your journey as a founder, I obviously know this because I work with you all closely, that you started off with Akhil and now you are married, and having so I'm that person that my personal life and professional life is separate, like as separate as it gets, and I'm so clear about it. So I just want to know, as a women founder, and to everybody who's listening here, because you've heard of Mama Earth, who's made it with her husband. You've heard of so many other businesses who are growing with their husbands. So you have grown with your brand through multiple stages of being a girl to being a woman.
Yeah.
How has that been for you, and how has that kind of parallelly worked together?
I think it's been really good, to be honest, right? Because I think what I kind of touching upon what I said earlier as well, bifurcating roles. I think that's been key. And for Akhil and me, we have completely different skill sets. Like we could not have them like even one thing similar in terms of our working style. But I think that works really well because, you know, I completely know what's in my circle of competence and he knows what's in his. And,
Right.
you know, we make sure that we don't sort of, you know, step over, you know, each line over there as well. So it's actually worked in my favor for sure. Like I cannot imagine what the business would be if one of us would not in
Right.
it, you know. So I think we complement each other skills wise. Can I say that we have a bifurcation between personal life and work life? Probably
I was just
not.
going to ask you that.
Definitely not, right?
Is your Sunday morning conversation
Our
also
Sunday
on
morning
course?
conversations, our midnight conversations all revolve around, you know, OnCourse. And now we have a 3-year-old. So part of
Oh,
the
wow.
conversations have moved and revolved around the 3-year-old, my daughter as well. But otherwise, there's no bifurcation at all. Yeah.
Do you feel the need sometimes it's required? Is it tough to remove that personal time?
I think we're both workaholics at heart. So I think we're okay.
Yeah.
At least as of now. But we do like I said, right now we have, you know, Mariah in our lives.
Yeah.
And that, in a way, it's great because it forces us to not talk about, you know, on-course stuff. But yeah, otherwise, I think we are happy with the way it's going.
So how do you feel with women entrepreneurship growing in our country?
I think it's very, very essential. I think more women need to sort of, you know, be in the workforce more than even entrepreneurship, do things, because I think women know how to juggle things in life, right? They know how to multitask. And I think that's a skill that is very undervalued.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the more that women actually decide that, look, we want to go into the workforce, we want to start something that, you know, is of our own, the better for sure, right? No, obviously from a Indian economy standpoint, but also I think in terms of personal growth, development, in terms of, you know, in the future, I think it's really good for everyone.
We've been working with you for almost 6 months now, and by default come for shoots to bother your lunches. And as two co-founders, I think whenever I come to your office, I just see you all more at the desks with your team than in your own cabin. And being somebody who's very, very stringent on culture, it is difficult with the new generation when I'm starting out building, because everybody's personalities are so woke.
Yeah.
So to say, because
so different, right?
So, they are. I mean, when I hire, certain things that I hear from, like, instead of me telling them my expectations, they are giving me their expectations, and I'm like, sure, I'm going to kind of fulfill that. So I have to commend you on the culture, because no matter what happens, it's just so competitive yet learning centric. I think everybody's there to help. So personally, and since you are the HR, you manage the HR, like, how did you inculcate this culture? Like, what was your, like, if you could tell us some hidden tips regarding
I
this.
wish I had some secret sauce to this, but I think honestly, it comes from just the top, right? It comes from like, you know, everyone who's joining, who's new, sees what the people who've done, or people who've been there like the last 8-10 years have done as well, and kind of how they conduct themselves as well, right? So for me, it's really important that I have the right culture set for my senior team, because the senior team is what will motivate the ones who come in, you know, the juniors after that, right? So I think just seeing how, and I think also the fact that we have so many people who stayed for 10 years in an industry
that's also a very big, like, that's commendable to have one person stay for this long
Yeah,
when people are shifting jobs in 6 months right now.
I think this year we're celebrating 3 or 4 10-year anniversaries.
Oh, wow.
Next year we'll probably celebrate another 3 or 4 10-year anniversaries, and we're close to like 8 or, you know, some 8-year anniversaries as well.
Wow.
So I think that in an industry which is not a quintessential, you know, graduate from a top college, not finance, not consulting industry, is something that a lot of the juniors, when they come in, they see that. And a lot of them like to do these chats, you know, like quick chats with everyone on the team when they join, just to say, understand their experience, how they've grown over the years, how their roles have evolved over the years, right? So while I would say we're a relatively, you know, older company, we still have a little bit of a startup mindset, because there's so much that's constantly evolving. So, and I think that motivates people. So, you know, I think we've also I guess, come to the conclusion that there'll be some people who will want to do this for a couple of years and then move on, and that's totally fine. And then there are people who want to look at this as a longer term career.
Yeah.
And so both ways, it, sort of works for us as long as we can get the best out of them for the time that we're with us.
Going back to your early days, you were 20, 21, 22 in that stage. I'm guessing most of your skill sets was learning on the job. What were these 2-3 things that you really struggled with as a founder? And now after, say, 10 years or 15 years, you have been like, okay, I aced it, or I managed to maybe get through.
For me, the biggest one was delegation, right? Okay. I think I really struggled with that. If you ask anyone, they probably will say that I still struggle a bit with it. So I think delegation was one where, just like you said, right, you're a perfectionist, you want everything done in a certain way. I think that was one piece that I really struggled with. It took me like at least 5 to 6 years to really start delegating. Okay. I would say I've made big progress, could still be better for sure. And I think the second thing is being out there, right? By being out there, I mean on social media, on LinkedIn, on different channels. I'm that way a very reserved person in terms of I like to kind of be in my space, do my thing, do my work, and that's that. But I think it is now becoming more and more essential to have that little bit more of a presence. And I think that's something I'm trying to work on with your help and Shakara's help for sure on LinkedIn and things like that. But in general, I think that's something that I have struggled with for sure.
And I'm so glad when you spoke about this, you didn't bring any business jargons. It was so emotion-based that you were caring more, you were hand-holding more. And I think that personal experience, yes, back in the day, 13 years back, I know the market was small, but now it's growing. Like every second kid wants to study abroad. And, you guys have been there for so long. So obviously there's been a journey that you've been through. But how are you fighting the competition today? Because there are counselors and now you have influencer content creators who also consult kids at their capacity. So you've got so many fragments. So how are you dealing with the competition and how are you ensuring that your business is growing sustainably?
I think for us, it's always been, head down, focus on what we like to do and focus and never sort of lose sight of what our entire goal has been, right?
Okay.
So while we started off, of course, really small, it was just 2 of us. We were working out of a little apartment, then moved into a small conference room. Just that personalization was something we wanted to ensure that we always maintain. And that's how we sort of started to slowly build our team because we realized, one, we wanted to grow it as a business. But 2, we also wanted to ensure that personalization comes through. And for us, I think the main draw was the age, right? In a way, it's strange to say that now, but the fact that we were younger, we could relate to the kids more. And that's something we realized as we get older, our kids and clients are still possibly the same age, right? So I think that's when we started hiring a team, getting, younger people who'd been through this whole process to ensure that we maintain that personalization. At the same time, if for anyone who knows us as a company or me as a person or anything will know that the focus is always on the client experience, right? It's for the first time in the last few years, we've really pushed out on like social media and marketing because I think that is sort of the need for today. But we've never lost sight of that client servicing metric. So product development, client servicing development is something that we do training on every year.
Got it. So it's been, like you said, 13 to 14 years to OnCourse. What are those key goals that you set out, which you think you've kind of made it now that it's been so long?
I think one, having an amazing team, which, was a goal that we set out in the start, which was, I think, a very difficult goal at one point because hiring the right people in this industry was almost impossible, right, at a point. So I think the people behind OnCourse, that's one big goal that, we sort of set out, and I think that's done well. I think also just having that brand being associated with that word trust is something that I do think now, we're at a good place, with that as well. Now it's a matter of, one, maintaining that, right? So that's for sure. I think we want to definitely continue to expand our team. So the people within the business, I think that's one plan for sure. Maintaining that element of trust, but always learning and growing in that sense, right? Because I think with each admission cycle, whether it's MBA, undergrad, master's, boarding school, whatever it might be, we learn so much about the industry. We learn so much about, the market in general. So I think it's making sure that at no point we're complacent in that space, and always knowing that there's so much more room to grow somewhere. So I think that's just sort of what we always put our heads down and make sure that we're doing.
Yeah, I think the journey of being an entrepreneur is learning every day.
Yeah.
I don't think that learning ever stops.
Never.
Because it comes in all different
Yeah,
forms.
and I think also the journey includes, learning from the people that you work with. Because there's so much that, our senior team now, like they all have such varied skill sets. And I think we learn more from them sometimes now than they learn from us. And I think that's the exciting part, at the stage we're at. And that's the super exciting part of it. Yeah.
And it's good to see that you got the right people. I think most founders, and when I was doing my study before I started this company, one of the biggest reasons why startups failed was because they had the wrong people.
Yeah.
Hiring is a scary, scary space. So, how can you shed a little light on the hurdles you faced while hiring for OnCourse?
Every possible hurdle, I think. So one is, where do we even find the people to start? Because in our space, right, we wanted someone who studied at a really good university, who's been through the process. It's not, like I said, a finance consulting sort of glamorous job that people think about. Someone who has great communication skills, writing skills. So all that is very hard to find. I feel like it's trying to. So, I mean, of course, we use LinkedIn a lot, in terms of hiring. The best hires have come through our current employees, though. I will say that, right? So most of them, when they know the culture of the organization, when they know the work that they're doing, that gratification that they see when someone gets into a college, or when someone gets a good score on their test or SAT, ACT test, or whichever test it is, I think they really value the role at that stage. And I think, like I said, majority of the good people we've gotten has been through the people that we currently have. So I think our hiring hurdles is a different story altogether.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, right, a younger generation, it's much harder to manage. It's different mindset, different goals. But we have to just do what we can do, and like I said, get the best out of the people while they're there.
While they're with you, right. We're just getting into a little bit of a fun segment. I think we spoke about OnCourse, our journeys and the industry. So we're going to play like a short rapid fire round. It's just a bunch of questions that we want to ask you. This is very, very specific to Alisha. So please tell us, how would you react or tackle this? These are one word or one sentence answers only. Are you ready?
Do I get a coffee with Karan kind of hamper at the end?
I think everyone's asked for it, but you are going to get one at the end.
I'm just kidding.
When you studied abroad, what were the two things you missed the most about India?
Family and noise. I loved it.
Okay. If you didn't go to Harvard, which university would you pick to go to in today's age?
Swarthmore.
Okay, where's that?
It's in Pennsylvania.
Okay, wow. What has been the weirdest ask that you have got from a client, a parent, or a student?
That's a very long list of things that I've got in the past.
You can just tell us your top two.
Weirdest ask from a client or a parent to accompany them to college. Yes.
They took the relationship very seriously.
A little too seriously. Yes.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your younger self about studying abroad?
Don't be afraid to speak up and take advantage of the opportunities that they actually present you. I think as like Indians, we're very reserved, right? So we get scared to talk to teachers and professors and those things. I would say that.
If you had to pack your bag to go abroad, what are the three things that you will definitely take?
To go abroad for like a holiday? Or
no, to study
just
abroad.
To study abroad. I would take my squash racket, maybe. So I used to have like these little laughing Buddhas, which were luck for me. So I used to always carry a little laughing Buddha in my like little bag. So my laughing Buddha, my squash racket, and probably a book.
2 secret Ivy League tips you want to give students applying this year?
There's no secret to Ivy League. That is the first tip I will give. And the second is, do what you are genuinely passionate about. I know this sounds very cliche, but genuinely do what you're passionate about in terms of activities and interests, because that passion is something that they can very clearly see through.
Which was your favorite picnic spot when you were in Harvard?
Basically, my dorm was right by the Charles River. Okay. So I would say the Charles River.
What is the life motto that you have lived by to help you build such a steady business?
Patience, and balance.
Okay. Which is the most common study abroad misconception that still exists in the industry of India?
That only if I study engineering, will I get a job? Maybe. That still exists for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And only if I study at like Harvard or Yale or Princeton am I worth, is it worth studying abroad?
Last question. Can you rank these universities in order of the best student life?
Oh, okay.
Brown, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, and Stanford.
I'm going to say Harvard first because I went there and I'm biased. The second I would say is probably Stanford. The third I would probably say is Brown. The fourth would be probably Cornell, and then the fifth, Dartmouth.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I think this was a very fun segment. Before we close this episode, the name of the series is called FoundHers. And the play on the word is because we feel like every woman out there, every women founder out there, they're in the business of creating change and doing something for themselves. So what is it that Alisha is finding?
I think I'm still finding that right balance of being, one, a founder, two, a friend to the people that I work with, and three, the client relationship piece, along with, balancing my personal life with, a 3-year-old and, family and things that I have.
Okay. So thank you so much. I think this was a very informative sort of a session, and it was lovely to have you here. So thank you for taking the time out.
Thank you for taking the time to call me and have this session, and for everything.
Hi everyone, this is an official end to the season 1 of the FoundHers podcast series. I'm so excited, nervous, and thankful to each and every person who has been present in helping us put this content out there, and most importantly to the community who has supported us, to each one of you who reached out and came back to see each and every episode. We created this entire series for women founders and women out there to inspire you all. So please slide into our DMs, drop us a comment and tell us what would you like to hear for season 2, because we're super excited to get that going very soon.